New York State is trying to solve one of the great energy paradoxes of our time. On one hand, you have this massive commitment, a zero emissions target by the year 2040. That's a hard, hard deadline. And on the other hand, the state is seeing just explosive growth in energy demand.
Oh, absolutely.
It's coming from everywhere. The push for home electrification, data centers, and all this new power-hungry semiconductor manufacturing moving into upstate New York.
Right.
So these two pressures, the net zero deadline and the skyrocketing load growth, they create this huge tension. How do you meet demand, keep the lights on, keep it affordable, and still stay completely clean? Our mission in this deep dive, custom tailored for you, is to unpack the state's answer to that. We're talking about the ambitious 2025 State Energy Plan. And we're really zeroing in on why New York is relying so heavily on new advanced nuclear energy to keep costs down, and why that decision helps protect open land.
We're synthesizing some really fascinating material today. Our analysis comes right from the official 2025 New York State Energy Plan.
The one approved in December 2025.
That's the one.
Yeah.
We're also pulling in some rich public opinion data from a statewide survey by the Center for Community Studies. And maybe most surprisingly, we have insights from a report commissioned by the Rockefeller Foundation, which shows a major philosophical shift.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start with the baseline, because New York isn't starting from scratch here.
Not at all.
The state is already deeply nuclear. The existing Fleet Fitzpatrick, Gina, 9 Mile Point already provides 21% of all the state's electricity.
And that number becomes even more crucial when you look at just the carbon-free generation.
Right.
Those existing plants, they account for a remarkable 45% of New York's total clean power supply.
45%.
They're the backbone of the state's current efforts. The plan sees them as essential, but the real challenge is scaling up. The state needs more clean, reliable power, which is why this 2025 plan makes such a firm commitment to building new nuclear.
So the 2025 plan was unanimously approved, and what jumps out right away is how pragmatic it is.
It's very pragmatic.
It confirms all the big investments in renewables, solar, offshore wind, but it also says, we need a variety of reliable sources.
Including advanced nuclear and even some temporary reliance on clean, firm natural gas to meet that future demand.
Because without it, the economy could be at risk.
Exactly. The decision is driven by a need for what the plan calls clean, firm generation.
Okay, break that down.
Well, renewables are clean, but they're intermittent. They only work when the sun is out or the wind is blowing. The state needs power that's zero emission and available 24/7.
Otherwise known as firm power.
That's it.
And with that expected load growth from, say, a microchip factory, that firm generation is it's non-negotiable, right?
It's absolutely non-negotiable. The growth in demand means you can't just rely on storage to fill the gaps. And the state has already made a massive move. In June 2025, Governor Hochul directed the New York Power Authority, or NYPA,
right?
to develop at least 1 gigawatt of zero-emission advanced nuclear power.
1 gigawatt. That's a huge capacity target. That really changes the energy landscape, especially upstate. So to make that happen, you need a serious policy framework. What's underpinning this whole thing?
Well, since January 2025, the state has been developing a comprehensive master plan for responsible advanced nuclear development.
Based on the NYSERDA blueprint.
Precisely. This master plan is the foundational framework. It's looking at everything: cost projections, safety protocols, siting rules, and long-term waste management.
The whole roadmap.
The whole roadmap to make sure this is done responsibly.
Okay, here is where it gets really interesting for the average New Yorker. The public opinion data, it just confirms that the number one concern isn't just emissions, it's affordability.
It always is.
So if New York wants public buy-in, they have to prove this path actually saves money.
The survey findings are unmistakable on this. Affordability of electricity is overwhelmingly important. We're talking 89% of people statewide found it extremely or very important.
89%. Wow.
And when you ask them specifically about a new nuclear plant, the single biggest concern for 64% of residents
is the impact on long-term electricity rates.
That's it. That's the main hurdle.
Okay. But historically, new nuclear projects have been famous for their enormous upfront costs.
They have.
So if the public is this worried about costs, how does the state energy plan argue that adding new nuclear actually reduces overall system costs?
It's a critical distinction. You have to look at the system-level economics, not just the capital cost of one reactor. The 0 by 40 techno-economic assessment did just that. It looked at two scenarios, one with only renewables and storage, and one that included nuclear.
And what did it find?
The analysis shows that the availability of nuclear helps to lower total system costs compared to the zero nuclear scenario.
Okay, can you break that down for us? How does one really expensive thing save money across the whole grid?
The primary saving comes from avoiding massive storage costs. In a world without new nuclear, New York would have to build a monumental amount of battery storage.
Not just for overnight, but for longer periods, right?
Exactly. Not just for daily dips, but to cover extended periods of low wind or sun, sometimes lasting for days or even weeks. This storage has to be built, maintained, replaced. It costs billions and billions of dollars.
And nuclear provides that firm, zero-carbon power 24/7.
Which drastically reduces how much of that storage you need to build.
So it's like an insurance policy against the crippling cost of intermittency.
A perfect way to put it. And it's a policy that's heavily supported by federal aid. The Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, which was strengthened and extended in the OBBA, provides incredible tax credits.
The 45U for existing plants, but also the new ones?
The new 45Y and 48E credits for clean energy generation and investment in new facilities, these are huge.
So how do those federal dollars translate into lower bills for the average person in New York?
Well, these credits often work as direct payments, or they're highly transferable, so they immediately reduce the effective cost of construction and operation for the utility. And the plan specifically says these strengthened federal credits will translate into significant utility bill savings for consumers.
And the state is also trying to keep the current clean power stable. That 45% we mentioned, that's the zero-emission credit program, or ZEC.
Right, that program supports the existing nuclear fleet to recognize their value. It ensures they don't close down early.
And it's set to expire in 2029.
It is, but there's a proposal to extend it all the way through 2049. And the proposal is clear that any extension has to be done with ratepayer protection in mind.
So we've covered affordability. But the plan highlights another benefit that's really about environmental stewardship. It's about protecting open land. In this big push for renewables, we often forget the sheer scale, the acreage needed for solar farms and wind turbines. Some people are calling it the industrialization of nature.
And this is where the physics of advanced nuclear gives it a unique comparative advantage. That Rockefeller Foundation report, it looked at these dynamics globally, and it found that energy systems that include nuclear tend to be more spatially compact.
Okay, put that into perspective for us.
If you need to build 1 gigawatt of power, a typical solar farm might need thousands of acres.
Thousands. Land that can't be used for farming or conservation.
Right. A 1 gigawatt small modular reactor facility, on the other hand, can often fit on less than 100 acres. The difference in footprint is it's staggering.
So it's not just about reducing carbon, it's about reducing the entire industrial footprint on the landscape.
That's a huge part of it, and that compactness matters for two big reasons: land use and transmission.
Okay, land use is obvious. Less land means fewer political fights over siting and permitting.
Exactly.
But the transmission connection is key, because these huge, sprawling renewable projects are often built really far from where people actually live and need the power.
Precisely. And building new high-voltage transmission lines is incredibly expensive, time-consuming, and politically very, very challenging. But nuclear, especially SMRs, can often be sited much closer to existing industrial centers, or even on the sites of former fossil fuel plants.
So you can leverage existing infrastructure.
You leverage the grid connections that are already there, you put the high-capacity, firm power source near the demand, and you drastically reduce the need for those costly, controversial transmission lines that have to cross hundreds of miles of the state.
Which means advanced nuclear can actually enable other economic growth without eating up huge amounts of land.
That's right, and it goes beyond just electricity. Advanced nuclear generates a lot of high-quality heat as a byproduct.
And that heat can be used for what?
All sorts of industrial applications. Process heat for making chemicals or steel or, and this is a big one, for large-scale hydrogen production.
And New York is already working on this.
They are. Yeah. There's already a hydrogen production demonstration project at the 9 Mile Point nuclear station. It shows the potential for this kind of economic synergy on a really tiny footprint.
This might be the biggest philosophical news in all the sources we looked at. For decades, nuclear energy was sort of the ideological enemy of major environmental groups.
Oh, absolutely.
And the stance of the Rockefeller Foundation, which has historically been an anti-nuclear stalwart, it shows a massive shift What was the trigger?
The trigger was an honest look at the climate outcomes. The November 2025 Bellagio convening, which the foundation hosted, was what the report calls a pivotal moment for nuclear philanthropy.
So what happened there?
Attendees, many of whom had strong ideological opposition in the past, they looked at the data and they collectively acknowledged nuclear as an essential clean energy source.
So the realization was that their own ideology had actually become counterproductive to their main goal of solving climate change.
That is the painful lesson they accepted. The report even noted that historical opposition has led to the premature closure of dozens of nuclear reactors around the world.
And when those clean reactors shut down?
The grid operators had no choice. They had to replace them immediately with dispatchable fossil fuels, which set climate progress way back. The analysis showed them that systems that include nuclear actually reduce total system costs and lead to better climate outcomes.
So the focus for these foundations is shifting from opposition to what?
To support. They're now focusing their philanthropic efforts on good policy design, on transparency, and critically, on de-risking the early stages of advanced nuclear projects to help attract the huge amount of private capital that's needed.
So that's the informed elite pivoting based on the data. Let's bring the public sentiment back in. Is the general public in New York just as convinced?
The public is still in the learning phase. A pretty big majority of residents statewide, 64%, feel they need to learn much more before they can confidently support or oppose nuclear development.
So it's a knowledge gap, not necessarily an entrenched opposition.
Exactly.
And what happens when people do feel informed?
Well, among the residents who do feel well-informed enough to have an opinion, support clearly outweighs opposition by almost a 2-to-1 margin statewide.
2-to-1.
We're talking 23% support versus 12% opposition.
And is that consistent across the political spectrum?
This is where we see something really rare in 2025. Bipartisan agreement. In northern and central New York, among those who feel confident in their views, both Republicans and Democrats show nearly identical, strong support ratios over opposition.
Really? How strong?
Approaching 4-to-1 support for both parties. It suggests that once people understand the benefits, the lower cost potential, the land savings, the issue actually unites people instead of dividing them. So, to summarize this really ambitious plan, New York's energy plan is pivoting to advance nuclear because it's a critical tool for managing complexity. The kind of complexity that renewables alone just can't solve by 2040.
Right.
It's being used not just for zero emissions, but as the key mechanism for lowering total system cost.
By avoiding that expensive storage and transmission build-out.
Exactly. And protecting open land because of the technology's inherently small footprint.
And the financial architecture behind this, the ZEC extension, the federal credits from the IRA and OBBA, they're all explicitly designed with ratepayer protection in mind. The goal is to ensure stability and affordability in a high-demand future, to keep costs from just skyrocketing. So what does this all mean for you? Well, New York's commitment to advance nuclear is driven by necessity, and it's supported by this remarkable shift in consensus, even from groups like the Rockefeller Foundation. But this entire ambitious plan, which depends on deploying new SMRs and getting advanced fuels like HALEU, it all really hinges on public understanding.
And that survey data gives us our final provocative thought. If the economic and the land use benefits are this clear, the most significant barrier to New York's clean energy future, it may not be technological or financial.
Or even political.
Or even political. Rather, it's the fact that 3 out of 5 New Yorkers are still waiting to learn more about advanced nuclear before they confidently make up their minds.
So the state's biggest challenge isn't building the reactors.
It's closing that public knowledge gap.